Welcome to
Oh.
WrestleHook. My name is Brendan, and I am joined by my co-host Girard to talk about the best
Mhm.
women's matches of the year. In today's video, you know, we've already talked about the best men's matches of the year. So if you're watching this video, go check that one out afterwards. That's already on the page, as well as our favorite men's and women's wrestlers of 2024. The best ones already uploaded. So check those out. In today's video, though, like I said, we're going to talk about the best women's matches of the year. I do want to give it a disclaimer at the beginning of this, though. We are typically going to be focusing on matches that happen either in WWE or AEW. There may be some other ones here or there, but that's primarily what we consume. So I know there has been a lot of great matches in some Joshi promotions and CMLL, stuff like that. Unfortunately, we don't really have the whole landscape to check out. However, I've definitely watched a few of those, and we may have some sprinkled in. That being said, Gerard, were there any matches that like narrowly missed your list, or are we going to start with number three?
I need to throw an honorable mention out there because I don't think one's gonna get on my list either way, and I don't think the other
Mm-hmm.
one will either. So, but it's gonna take you all the way back to Australia, to Perth, the main event for the women's world title: Rhea Ripley versus Nia Jax.
Oh,
14 minutes, and I thought this was at that time the best match of Nia Jax's career. I To give her that kind of highlight spot, to have that match with Rhea and to build her up from her comeback, surviving the fatal five way and being one of the only people not to be pinned in that match, and to build up her monster aura of her beating everybody, toppling over everybody to get to Rhea. And I didn't know Niall's from Australia either, but to have or born in Australia at something like that.
sure.
So they both had home ties to that match in some way, shape, or form. But to have that match in the main event with that sunset and everything, that was the perfect way for that show to go. That was an entertaining affair. And to me, that was the first time I was like, okay, there's something on the Nia. There's actually something cooking with Nia. Like, I hope they do a little bit more with her and they don't just throw her to the wayside now that the end of her monster reign has ended. Because usually that's what happens in WWE. You get a monster, you build them up, you beat them, and then by the year's end, they're doing comedy sketches with Santino or R Truth or whoever, and they're tripping in the backstage segments and whatever's happening. So to not have Nia falling down that path, which may be maybe her final cousin might be supporting her in her efforts behind the scenes as well to keep her in a
Sure.
prominent spot, but she's also been putting the effort and the work in the ring as well and on the mic. So
Yeah. I
I gotta
think
throw her out there for that match too.
and I think if you're saying that was her best match of her career to that point, I think it still is. I don't think anything she's done has reached that level since then. I think like that was definitely to me her stand up performance, and you know, I definitely could see because she was really built up pretty well to that point, to have Rhea beat her, and I think her title reign has been pretty shaky, not really all that. I don't think she's been put in the best positions like to continue that dominant reign just because of the way that they've decided to weave her in with like Candice LeRae and Tiffany as like her alliance. Like I don't really think it's gone very well, to be completely honest, but I do think that match was certainly stand out and one of those ones that I'll have to go back and check out because I did watch that at like 6 in the morning and I liked it, but I didn't really consider putting it on this list, so I'll have to go rewatch that. Um, I don't really have any honorable mentions aside from I think we already talked about in the Women's Wrestler of the Year video. We talked about some of those TV matches that Bianca Belair has had this year. Just those singles performances, the one with Iyo Sky, in particular on a Raw episode, that really, really picked up towards the end, as well as a really underrated match with Piper Niven as well recently on a SmackDown. I think those are some matches to check out, but those are not quite near the top level that I wanted to talk about today. And my number three match is a street fight at AEW All Out. It is Willow
Mm.
Nightengale versus Chris Statlander. This match to me had all of the makings of like a classic street fight. Right, it had the weapons necessary. It had violence, it had blood, it had drama, and this one also had an unpredictable finish. I thought, there was a they could really go either way, but I was pretty convinced that Willow was going to win, and she did not. So I thought this was um, thrilling in pretty much every way possible, and was one of those matches that after that show I came out thinking, man, that might have been the best match of the show to me. And Chris has had really good performances, and so has Willow aside from this. But um, I just thought it was interesting that um, they were able to get kind of a plunder match to that high of quality as well, because I don't think that always happens with singles matches. So yeah, I'm gonna put this as my number three. What are your thoughts on that one?
I couldn't agree more, and this match definitely revisits. We'll have a revisit us during this video because it's on my list later
Gotcha.
on too.
Well,
So,
and the other cool thing
but
about this that I want to mention too is that they don't traditionally have great chemistry in their matches together. Like you'd think that these two like pillars of the AEW women's division, they've got to be like have some great matches in the past, but really they've kind of always been a little bit awkward and not quite on the same page in a lot of ways. But knowing that going in and then seeing what we got out of it, to me, that's why it had to go on my list. So great to hear that's on your list in the future. What was your number three?
my number three is Tony Storm versus Mariah May at All In. Watch this from your place, and to me, this was a great match for story, for wrestling, different elements that we brought in using the mother.
Mm-hmm.
We had some blood in this match that just playing off of that from the angle as well, and Mariah being the one to bleed as well, bleeding the most. It just I loved what we got out of that match. I loved the impact that it had for Tony Storm's character and her story after the fact as well. It's not my favorite work rate match of the year. It definitely isn't, and that's why it's number 3 for me, but it is for
It
the
was
overall
strong though.
package of a match. I enjoyed it a lot for
Yeah,
All In, especially with the stadium.
it was really really good, and it narrowly missed my list, but I thought it was super, and it was just nice because like a lot of times you don't see AEW women's division stories this long where they stick to it. There's a clear beginning, middle, end with a big time turn. Like this had all the makings of a good storyline, good build, and then the match delivered. It delivered like we thought it would. So even though it may not have exceeded our expectations by a ton, I think it's just because they were pretty high going in. So I completely agree with you there. My number two was a match actually in Marigold, and this was Iyo Sky returning
Mm.
to Japan, wrestle Utami, and this was one where I think a part of the reason why I adored this match so much was the environment that I watched this match in, which was on my laptop at 3 a.m. in my room. But I was watching a grin along on the late night grin channel, and it was one of those moments where I felt like like a lot of wrestling, like it's on in prime time and you catch it when you can and stuff like that. But this felt like one of those moments where a lot of the wrestling community, a lot of the people that I've started to get to know through this space and was interacting with at that point. We all kind of watched it together, and it was like this. When you watch matches, like to me, I haven't really been able to stay up for any Wrestle Kingdoms in the past or anything like that. Like I've always had to kind of just catch them, later, and being able to like watch this live. Also just like the obvious like absurdity that this is like a WWE wrestler who's pretty pushed, like wrestling in another promotion in Japan during their run. Like that's obviously itself um a huge surprise and a very notable thing to see. But also the match, like it just it made me so happy to see because Io hadn't to that point had an opportunity to really, I think, be established as a main event level star in WWE. She had moments in NXT and on main roster, obviously she had the WrestleMania match with Bailey, which was a great way to start. But I think this was just like when you watch this match, there's just a different level Iyo can get to, and part of that is that she's working a familiar style. Utami had a really really good performance here, and it was a really cool story because it was kind of about how Utami wanted this match because since Iyo left, there's kind of been this shadow over like Joshi wrestling, and it's something that Utami was trying to take on this mantle of, but Iyo coming back kind of shattered some of that kind of confidence for her, and she wasn't quite able to get to that level that Iyo had because Iyo was kind of showing why Iyo's still the best in the world. So it was a cool story. It was wrestled super well. There was some great spots, but to me, it's mostly just it's seeing Iyo get to another level, and one that like reminded me that if she does get this opportunity, maybe in 2025, um, big things are ahead for Iyo. So this was one of my favorite matches of the year. Girard, did you end up being able to see this match, and what were your thoughts if you did?
You're making me regret watching it in highlight form because that's how I watched it as clip and highlight form. I never actually watched the full match, and so
Mhm.
you got a lot more of that story and a lot more of the I just remember a lot more of the moves and the
Yeah,
energy from the space, but no, you the way you just explained that was beautifully, like, that was amazing. So, no, I feel like I missed out on a lot just from watching it in clip form, so I'm definitely have to go back and
yeah. It's
capture
it's
more of that.
totally worth rewatching. I think it was I was sending it to my friends that only watch WWE matches, and I was like, hey, watch this. Like, 'cause you know this person, and I don't know if they ended up doing it, but to me, it was like worth going out of my way to tell people, hey, watch this match if you didn't get to watch it. Um, yeah, one of my favorites. What was your number two?
Yeah, that's a solid number 2. My number 2 is gonna take us to Double or Nothing for the TBS title, and it's Mercedes Monet versus Willow Nightingale, the champion.
CEO.
And before this was such a great match to me, and it's a match that, in my opinion, should have been the match at Dynasty. And if it was at
True.
Dynasty, would have been the greatest show I've ever been to. And
Yeah.
I don't know what would have topped that, honestly. From start to finish, that would have been the app. Oh, but I digress. It happened at the next show, and the results at Dynasty led us to Willow versus Mercedes. Willow's promos and energy and star grew in that match leading up into it, and then the performance throughout the whole match of like, yo, you came to my house to come and take my stuff. I'm not just gonna let you snatch what's mine. You have to kill me for it. And was even going to pull off the win before Punko Stokely and Born Again lost again, backsliding Chris ended up doing what she did. So,
Yeah, it was disgusting.
but to me, what a match. One of my favorite women's, clearly my number 2 women's match of the year. And for a good time period, this was my number 1 AEW women's match. It was, but it's not anymore.
Well, we'll get to that soon. But my number one was Mercedes versus Willow. And
Oh.
for me, I think it was because of the spectacle first of seeing Mercedes' first performance in AEW, combined with the fact that it was against Willow, who, you know, pretty soon before won that championship. And I felt the drama. I felt the dread coming into the match, being a big Willow fan, but also the excitement of like, but how sweet is it gonna be when Willow gets that belt back off Mercedes? And although I wish it was more direct and more consistent, that story, that match still stands out to me because it's just one of my favorite women's wrestlers of all time versus one of my favorite women's wrestlers of the last couple of years. Um, and seeing Mercedes in that new environment and put on a phenomenal match in their first match back. There were some things about it that probably, um, Mercedes may have been a little bit rusty in some ways, but at the same time, a lot of her struggles like felt like those like real struggles, right? Like a lot of times she's so good at when, even if a spot is slightly messed up or a little bit late, like she makes it look like the struggle of getting tired in a match. And like I just thought that the urgency of the finish in that match and the way that they got to it, really, really good stuff, and absolutely one of my favorite matches. I put it as number one. Gerard, what was your number one?
You might find this very hard to believe,
Okay.
but my number one is Willow Nightingale versus Deonna Purrazzo at Collision. Just play it. I'm just playing. It's most definitely the street fight with my girl Willow from
I
All
forgot.
Out.
I forgot you still that on the table.
Oh yeah.
I was deeply concerned. I cannot. I was like, man, I don't
Look,
watch Collision like that. I guess I don't know when did that happen.
you was like, man, that must be the craziest sleeper match to go under the radar.
No, I just thought you like were DMing Deonna Purrazzo or something. I don't know.
No.
I'm just kidding.
No, yeah, she a beautiful woman. I ain't trying to holler at her like that.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
That's all I'm just saying. But Willow and Chris in that street fight to me is my number one AEW women's match of all time. This year, AEW might struggle with a buzz. They might struggle with attendance or whatever they might be going through. But hey, they do not struggle with setting the bar for their wrestling.
Yeah.
And with me having multiple times this year having to go, oh, that's my favorite women's match of this year. That's saying something.
Yeah.
That's saying something.
And even as recent as to me, the Mercedes and Chris match, it didn't quite get to where like I would put it as one of my top three, but it was certainly like shortly after that. And they're going again at this next pay per view at World's End. So Tony, listen to me. They need to go 20. Okay, they went like 19 minutes last time. No women's match in AEW has gone 20 minutes before. That should be the first one. Go 20. Let them do one more minute. And I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there's a chance Chris pulls it off. I don't think so.
Tony, okay. Listen here, Tony. Go ahead and give him that 20. But we need one more. So make it a triple threat. Go ahead and throw Willow up in there. Because we cooking a story about Willow taking that title off Mercedes, but we gotta have Willow and Chris trip over each other in this triple threat, trying to get that win. And because that Mercedes slips out that win, and we need that number one contenders match, and we need to actually. We talked about that chemistry earlier. Well, hey, run it back one more time. Run it back, Turbo. Run it back, Turbo. Sure. And then literally get it there and get us actual good. Give them no Stokely, no interference, no bull, and also one solid 15-minute number one contenders match, and let them cook.
I'll say the Chris and Mercedes match might have already made this list by the time this video comes out, because this may come out after World's End. But if it didn't, that's where we're at today. If you're listening to this video, though, give it a thumbs up. You drop a comment. Let us know what were your favorite women's matches of the year. Who were your favorite women's wrestlers of the year? Check out our video for that as well. And check out the future. We're going to have a video coming out soon about the best prospects, most improved, best angles. Basically all these little paper plate awards for wrestling. We're dropping them soon. So check those out. And if you're hooked on wrestling, you're in the right place. Peace.